So they call him Judge, his last name is Dredd. Break the law and you'll wind up dead. So the song goes. We have talked, we have shown pictures, we have done all sorts of things. We've looked at a few bits and pieces. We have not, as yet, ripped off the lid and actually shown you a base set and what the core game throws at you prospective Mega City denizens. So here it is, the unboxing of Judge Dredd I'm the Law, the starter set. Comes in around about 50 squids RRP, but as ever in anything gaming world, shop around. There are a few pounds to be saved here and there, depending on where you're getting it from and postage and all that jazz. It's a heavy enough wee box. It's not a massive box, but it's a heavy enough wee box. So yeah, it's not going to be too light in the mail, but it's not going to be a big parcel. It's probably going to be a small parcel kind of size. So let's get the cellophane off. You see, true to our word. I didn't need to get excited and have a pre-look at this because I've already done a base set for myself and for the club. So this is just for you. Another one that we can't do anything with. We'll just have to like give to small people or something. But anyway, so box, as you can see, nice artwork from Dredd. We've got all our various logos and stuff like that. They're supposed to do a quick flip to the back, and on the back, true to form, you get a picture of everything you're going to get in this starter set. Your little bit of blurb that runs you through kind of the nature of the game and whatnot. Start at the bottom, you get a sheet of transfers, you've got a sort of quick reference guide, quick startup sort of thing. You've got two sets of tokens, same tokens as you would have seen in the Strontium Dog base game, and indeed the tokens are compatible, as technically are the miniatures as well. You get your big wad of cards. These will be the armory cards that you'll use sort of in combat situations, and the big meg cards, which add a lot of Mega City flavour to the game, and you can use those pretty much any old time, really. The handout of them is determined by the scenario that you play. You get your softback rulebook. It's kind of got the typical warlordy kind of issues going on there. There is a bit of flicking to and fro, not always sort of completely sensible, the side-by-side material. But once you kind of know what you're doing, this is not the most complicated game, so find your way about it. It's by section rather than like a flow, so it does make its own sort of sense. We got a sheet of fairly good cardboard tokens in there to give you a bit of terrain and whatnot, and a rather nice, very large, double-sided Mega City playmat to give you a couple of different battlefields to play on until you feel inclined to getting around to building your own sort of thing, like what we are doing. So, lid off, and there we go. Set that over there so we don't lose it. Right, so there's our packer for today. Shout out to the packers. Underrated, but it's you that we rely on to get it right, and it's you that we shout at when you don't. But fair play to Warlord at the minute, still working a bit under par, staff-wise with COVID and whatnot, and yous are all doing a grand job. Thumbs up. Okay, so our tokens here, gold set, blue set, both be the same. We have our wound markers with our little sort of cross on them there. We've got our pinned markers that look like sort of a little hail of bullets hitting something, bit of a comic book explosion. We have our activation tokens, including the star tokens, which are used for special activations. You've got a chance whenever you activate a model with these to roll the dice, and if you get the right symbol, back into the bag this goes to later be able to use again in the same round, and indeed to reactivate a model that you have removed the token from. We've got our stunned markers with our little swirl of stars showing that they're a bit dazed and confused going on. The fast moving markers, little bits with wings on them. Overwatch tokens, so we've got sort of the all-seeing eye there, spy in the sky kind of thing. And then we have some numbered chips and some skull tokens. As yet not directly applied in the game, but they could be used in search scenarios to find locations and things, or to mark bodies or dead areas or dangerous terrain or something like that there. You will have a use for them. So both of those are the same. And we've got 3 sets in this one. Winner! We got an extra thing! It was her fault. Only joking. Nobody's going to complain about that. Nobody's going to get too upset over a set of tokens extra. We'll leave the cards just for now. As with many of these games, we've got bespoke dice going on. The hit symbol, the little sort of explosion, is normally the symbol you're going to be looking for a hit. The 2000 AD is the special symbol, which you will generally look for success at a special action like evade, perhaps. And we've got the shield token, the shield familiar from the top of the judges' helmets. That is usually for blocking hits, you know, shield after all. And we've got a couple of dinky standard D6, which are used for those little scenarios and situations where you have to roll a D6 or roll a D3 and round it up or halve it or whatever it happens to be to calculate your odds of success on something like that. Good old normal warlord bases there. And this here, we absolutely adore. We just love this. It's a sheet of transfers, but it's the typical graffiti that you would see around Mega City 1. So once you start building up a little bit of terrain, or maybe you've got some terrain sitting handy already, a few scrap vehicles and whatnot, these are the sort of things are just going to be beautiful. And if you're a fan of the old days of the comics, well, a lot of these slogans and sayings are obviously going to make a lot of sense to you and maybe tugging the little heartstrings of retro love as well. So that's nice. Really do like those. More of this sort of stuff, Warlord. Got our figures, we'll come to that in a second. Now, this map is very big. It is huge. So I'm not even going to try and throw it out. And the light here is not going to be conducive to sort of showing it to you at its very best either. Suffice to say, it's a very large playing area depicting 2 different zones of Mega City 1 that you can run around on. There's tower blocks and there's stairways and ruins and things like that. There's an overpass and stuff. Okay, as terrain, it's basic. You've got an underpass and that. You know, how you're going to use this is up to you. But it gets you started straight out of the box. Bang, you can start playing. And that's fair enough. It's nice for what it is. We have our little quick start. This is like a little sort of primer, just gets you into it nice and gently. There's a couple of very simple walking scenarios, just using a couple of models to kick you off into the game world and sort of hold your hand through the basics of the mechanics until you're ready to tackle something a little bit meatier from the main rulebook. And that being said, the scenarios in the main rulebook do sort of start off easy and heavy before you get into the campaign stuff, but this is just nice. It's a little added extra. It really simplifies it down and sort of takes you into it, and probably handy if you know you're in limited time for an evening or whatever. These are grand for just a quick fire little scenario. The little card terrain, do like this. Now these do tend to pop out on me when I've lifted them out before, but we're lucky enough tonight. So what we've got here is a couple of different things. We have a Munzburger stand, and you can see they've been rendered sort of being that 3D style, so you know this has got height. So if a miniature's standing beside it, it's out of line of sight, things like that. We have some barriers here, like a gas terminal. We've got a chap in Boeing. Again, if you don't know much about 2000 AD, Boeing is a future miracle plastic. You can breathe through it, and they discovered that you can literally spray it on yourself. It forms a natural ball, and you can bounce, and boinging is a pastime. Of course, there is illegal boinging out in the streets, which has seen the misfortunate end of more than 1 or 2 judges and plenty of citizens. We've got holding posts for arresting perps, but equally you can hide behind one and fire a couple of shots out there too. There is Sky, a recycle wagon for taking away materials, including people, for recycling. They recycle everything except the soul. The flip side of that is for your bit more banged up area. So it's the exact same sort of stuff, but it's, you know, block war time or rundown sector of the city. Everything's a bit more gnarly and burnt out and on fire and battered to bits. So you've got nice sector and, ooh, call the judges all the time. And then we've got our softback rulebook. We'll just set the box to the side there as well for now. So the softback rulebook, I'm not going to sort of flick, I should have lifted my own one actually so that I could flick with a bit more sort of passion through this. I don't want to obviously do any harm to this one because it is brand spanking new and somebody will end up enjoying this. Suffice to say, this hits two buttons firmly and squarely. One, obviously, if you're a fan of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd, you're going to love this rulebook, okay? Because it's filled with fantastic artwork, little pull-out sections, the sort of little reminders of cool things about Mega City 1 and the judges and the various characters. So from a fanboy point of view, you're going to be on cloud nine with a little sort of easy to digest nostalgia trip. From a player point of view, it's not a bad rulebook at all. The first section does sort of take you through everything. There's little nuances to this, and that's where the flicking kind of comes in when you're looking up weapons or you're looking, because what the symbols mean kind of changes from time to time. I'm not going to say it's a complicated mechanic. It's just not always intuitive until you kind of up and running. It borrows a little bit from the kind of bolt action activation system, and it builds on the Strontium Dog core rules with a much more urban combat theme to it, rather than being sort of sneaky about and patrols and stuff like that there. So it's as rulebooks go, I think it's fairly good, and my judgment is probably clouded slightly. Being a Judge Dredd fan, I'm going to hold the hands up and say I'm quite forgiving of a rulebook if it's really sort of tickle my fancy, so to speak, which this one does. But 2 or 3 plays in, you're kind of knowing where everything is, even the bits that you have to flick back to reference. It's not an annoyance, it's maybe a mild irritation at the start, and then you kind of find your feet and you know what you're doing with it, and you will be content as anything. So it takes you through sort of the basic rules, then it takes you through the weapons, close combat in a bit more detail, what the different guns do. Armor, where are we? And then we should be into sort of the people of Mega City 1. You get a breakdown of the different types of judges and characters. Obviously all the key ones, Dredd and Anderson, Death, Meme Machine, things like that there. They're all included here. There's a lot of classic villains in the first couple of waves that are out, and all their stats, everything that's been released to the best of my knowledge, all the stats and tables you'll need and weapons you'll need, they're all in this rulebook, right up to the most current releases. So it's probably, if there's going to be another wave, that's where we'll maybe see a bit of additional material, needing another book or something like that there. My gut feel would be, it would be nice to see a Cursed Earth book coming out, and that then's where we might start to see some of the new material if there's another wave, which hopefully, if you good folks support this, there will be, because there's still plenty of mileage to be had. Judge Orlok, the Soviet assassin guy, backgliders and whatnot. Now, some of these are named characters that have appeared in the comic, obviously, but by the same token, there's unnamed version. You know, if you're just looking to use the model as a whatever, as a backglider, you don't have to use it as the named character. You can throw them in as a citizen and a backglider. There's stats for pretty much everything. I mean, if you want to stick a judge on a sky surfboard, you can do it. The points are there for how to give them that, or if you want to stick and punk them one, or give them backglider wings or something like that there. Everything's there for you to play about with this. This, like the comic book world, is a sandbox that you can have your own kind of fun with. Okay, and then we come down towards the back here, and we get into more characters. Somewhere about here, we're into scenarios and then the campaign rules. Gotta say, I do like the campaign rules. This is probably one of the first games where I've got kind of interested and excited about campaign rules. The simple fact being, with the campaign in this one, you'll play, I don't know if you'll sort of make this out in any great detail, you'll play a number of games set in eras, early era, middle era and late era, and you have your band, and as you go through the eras, they will upgrade, they will age, they will get better at stuff. You can promote them if they're judges, they can become better gang members and sort of go up the gang echelons. Arrests, you'll do sentencing at the end of scenarios for anyone that you've arrested. They'll have risk spending time in the cubes, which can mean they can miss a game and things like that there. Judges can be investigated by the SJS and end up being suspended or end up being put out of the Justice Department. Prisoners can die in the ISO cubes. A judge can end up spending 20 years in Titan. So there's a lot of theme and game world meta hemmed into these little post-game segments between the rounds of the campaign phases. I think that's just lovely as well. And indeed, you can be promoted out of the game. You could have a judge or a gang leader who gets so much notoriety that they end up having to leave your roster because they've been earmarked for greater things. They're too much of a threat, or they've risen above mere gang violence into the organised crime syndicates. So they move beyond the echelons of being in a mere gang and fighting on the streets for a bit of fun. And that's just class. It really, really sings of 2000 AD. So yeah, lovely. If you just get the rulebook, you get all the core cards as well. They're all here. Special rounds and stuff like that there. Don't know if the back side of them's there. I think it's just the front sides, which is a shame. But so what? You know, it gets you up and running anyway. And your roster for doing out your gangs. Okay, so nice in that regard. All those regards. Take a little look at some of these cards. The Big Meg cards, as we say, and the Armory cards and stat cards. So the Big Meg cards are the story kind of generating things. These are stuff which really throws your flavour into the whole thing. There's our Armory cards. We won't run through them all on you because that just would be boring, frankly. But all of them are tied in. They're all something that happens in the comic book world or in one of the stories specifically. And these are kind of big meta things. Normally, the Big Meg cards are stuff that's going on the outside of the little conflict that your gang or you and the judges or two sets of judges or whatever are having. This is to represent the craziness of Mega City 1 and all the other stuff that's constantly going on. Like the boinger. And it's just a random boinger will splat on one of the teams or one of the guys that you target with this and potentially take them out of the game. It did in our first game. This landed in one of the gangers and that was him. Boom, KO'd, out of the match. It's a whole pile of stuff like that there, as well as some motivational things, give you a few little extra incentives, but they are the kind of cool big stuff. The Armory then, depending on the scenario, you get a certain number of these, you get a certain number of these. The difference is you'll get dealt a few of these, you'll get dealt, usually I think it's about 6 of these, you'll get to pick 3 depending on the scenario and keep them, you discard the rest. And these are generally the cool kind of weapons. They're the big nasty things. They're the special kind of rounds that you're going to have to fire from lawgivers or rockets or bombs or big explosions, fancy tricks and things like that. Medipacks, one of the only ways to bring somebody back from the brink. So whole pile, again, all very, very thematic. And because you're not able to do them all the time, because you're limited to this, when they happen, we tend to find you get very comic book moments where it either works gloriously or it still happens, but it just doesn't have the effect that you want because the other guy's lucky enough to dodge out of the way or she leaps over the car. All of the games that we've played have all had these huge sort of moments of comic brilliance where, whilst it didn't go in your favour, when you actually sort of look at what just happened, it was pure comic book stuff that happened and it was glorious. So these seem to have been fairly well thought out. There's a reasonably good balance of them. They don't overpower the game because you don't get a whole pile of them and you're not playing them constantly. And it's just nice. Put those back in there safely. Probably should have tried to put them all back in one go. No, there we go. They're all in. That's good. Now, aside from your roster card, you do get the little reference cards for your factions. You'll play games where you're able to buy like low-level guys as squads, and that's the same sort of thing for this. So your Judge Rookie, your Street Veteran Judge, Street Judge, Senior Street Judge, Block Gang. and you can see there you've got like your gang jibs, gang punk, gang heavy. These slightly better gangers are bought singly, whereas your jibs can be bought in twos up to groups of 3, and they'll run around as a group of 3 for you. Now they'll do the same thing, they'll all act at once, and they'll go down very quickly under a hail of gunfire or under daystick wax. But again, they're there to soak up bullets for your leaders and whatnot. Block gang lieutenant and a standard judge. Now, as with any sort of game that works like this with expansions and stuff, what you'll tend to find is these cards kind of kick you off as you buy an expansion. For example, the Mutant Sky Raiders that I'm working on at the minute, that comes with more cards to add to it. It comes with the stat cards for the Mutant Sky Raiders, and it comes with a couple of other card effects for the Mega City to bring into play as well. In fact, I think I've got the box, just because I cited them as an example, I think I've got the box of those sitting there. Says he, and then he probably doesn't, because I do tend to live in a slight world of chaos, throwing everything around the place. Yeah, okay, so there's our Mutant Sky Raiders box set, for example, okay, just because we threw them out there. And down here, you get our 3 miniatures, 1 vehicle card, 2 unit cards, 2 big meg cards, but you also see what they are, okay? So it tells you on every expansion what you're getting inside the box. It's not some sort of mystery bag. It's not like you're buying a thing kind of going, oh, well, I'm going to end up with something I've already got. You can kind of fine-tune even picking your expansions into what you're going to get, to know that you're getting cards and things that you're wanting to have in that kind of set too. Again, I stress the cards aren't essential. They don't drive it. They're not the nuts and bolts, but they are definitely the seasoning that goes on top of the skirmish system to really deliver that 2000 AD feeling into it all, aside from the miniatures just obviously being resplendent and looking the part too. So miniatures wise, we've kind of held them off here to the very end. So in this starter set, you get 1 blister of miniatures that's going to contain your judges, your judges and your gangers. And they are, now again, we're probably not going to do justice. I'll try and take some photographs actually and overlay with this for you, so they, no point talking about it. They're probably appearing somewhere about here-ish, I'd say. And we'll let you see them. I have painted up a couple of sets of these already. They paint up really, really well. A couple of our lads have started painting some of the stuff too and have really enjoyed the experience of them. They find the detail in them is very pleasing. Excuse the painted hand. I was painting before we done this as well. Doesn't look very pleasant, but there we go. Forgot about it. So yeah, metals and this kind of resin plastic. There's our little weapons arms for those guys too. And there's some nice poses. I mean, I would have been quite happy getting a box set like this and opening it up and getting 2 very sort of generic judges and a set of, you know, fairly standardized miniatures. The fact is, we have got a full set of everybody. We've got a couple of doubles up. That's fair enough, can live with that. But we've got 2 really nice judges, one with the day stick and the lawgiver, other with the lawgiver. No helmet, so you can play there quite nicely, a bit like the movie, that we've got a rookie and a senior judge, because that kind of fills in. We've got a heavier weapon going on here. We've got another sort of big gun, so there's scope to play with the gangers in terms of the weapon systems they've got. We've got a few in kind of classic hero sort of poses, so if you want to dictate one of them to be your leader, there's room to play with these to represent what you need them to be, and that's in our book a good winner too. Yeah, so there we go. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Oh, and we've got another packer. Look, different packer. Pack these. Packed as a duplicate. Just saying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's why you've got a duplicate. I take it back. You're supposed to get your 2 judges, and you're supposed to get 8 gangers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we've got a 9th. So there's a spare ganger has slipped in there. Another bonus. This is like a box of bonuses. Extra figure, extra set of tokens. because we can always spray those extra tokens in our colour for a third faction. There you go. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. We'll probably take something out of the next box that comes to us. But that's it, folks. That is the contents of the starter game. Hopefully that addresses a little bit of that for you. As I say, the idea with this is that you'll take notoriety points, which is the bottom stat on all the cards, and you'll have a notoriety point level. That's kind of the size you'll build your faction to. Starting games are usually like maybe a couple of judges of different ranks, and that would be sort of 3 or 4 gangers, equally a couple of juves and one sort of senior. So like a boss and a henchman and a couple of sidekicks will come out of your notoriety value for villains. And the judges, because they're that little bit more powerful, you tend to not get as much for your money. So one sort of good judge and one weaker judge, or a couple of cadets, something like that there, will tend to balance that out. And they should statistically be able to sort of take on 2 or 3 baddies each and kind of get away with that. So you have your notoriety value, you'll make up your roster, you'll put your activation tokens into a draw bag or a cup or whatever and draw out blind, and then you just simply apply the token to whatever figure you're wanting to activate. Do all your actions. There can be things that interrupt it, like different skills your opponent might have, like gunslinger and stuff like that there, that allow them to sort of do an interrupt and have a bit of a fight with you in the middle of your turn. Apply any modifiers, get your results, apply any tokens, damage tokens or whatever to it, and then it's leave the token there, get the next token out. So whilst the board can become a bit busy with tokens, usually the most of those are coming off at the end of the turn or at the start of the next as you do shake off actions or hunker down to get rid of wound levels and stuff like that. If you let a model take a pounding, they will end up with 3 or 4 wound markers and maybe a stunned and something. But the minute a model's cool is reduced to 0, or they take enough modifiers that were just at 0, they're essentially KO'd, they're knocked out, they're subdued. So whilst you can have quite a few tokens, usually those quite a few tokens literally means that that model is out of the battle. So this is a very fast little game too. So the terrain is important to be hugging that, to taking advantage of being out of line of sight. And I mean out of line of sight because the weapons in Mega City 1 are so powerful. Generally you can shoot through a wall. So normally if a model is like hiding behind a wall, the wall does nothing to mitigate the shot chance because bam, I just shoot straight through it. But it modifies the damage effect. So you might be behind a wall, an armor-piercing round will quite easily go through it and take you in the side, but it's when you roll your resistance to see how well you absorb that hit, that's where cover normally comes into it, to lend you a hand and sort of say, well, the wall's absorbed a bit of this, so you get an extra dice to try and block it, that sort of thing. The weapon ranges and stuff, some weapons get a minus modifier at close range because they're designed for firing far away. Some get a huge modifier at close range because they're weak, but they fire out showers and showers of bullets at close range, but they're useless at long range, so they get a modifier for things like that there. And those modifiers are used at the 2-hit stage. And then at the end of the round, if you've completed the objectives of whatever it is, subdue half your opponent's team or get off the board, then if you're playing on, you kind of take the end of round consequences and you roll to see what happens to your judges, what happens to your city defense people, what happens to your gangers, do they go to prison, things like that there. And that just sort of, it rounds off the story of the game rather than it just being an abstract fight for no reason. There's a little kind of narrative conclusion to it all as well, which just again tidies up and brings in that feeling of 2000 AD and the overall story arc. Tying in stories, by the way, it is completely permissible. There's a card even that does it, that brings Strontium Dog and Wolf Hammerstein into the game. So, boom, you can get your Strontium Dog miniatures, an excuse to get them on as a third faction into the game as well. Stats-wise, they work the exact same way. And by the same token, your mutes and things from Strontium Dog, there's mutants in Mega City 1 coming in from the Cursed Earth Adventures and stuff like that you can do. You can recycle those miniatures into this as well and just apply the stats from the Ganger cards relevant for this if you need to tie it more closely to the Big Meg. Boom, bing, bosh, that's us. Now not going to labour the point any further. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions about the game, please feel free to fire them on. We are going to try and do a little video of gameplay as well, and we will be looking one by one at the various expansions for this and what they bring to the table for you too. Probably starting off with Mutant Sky Raiders, because, you know, we've painted them, so might as well have an excuse to show them off. Meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. There is a button appearing somewhere on the screen. Who knows where? It could be everywhere. It could be the entire screen. But hit subscribe. Give us a like at the bottom of the page too. It means an awful lot. Thanks for watching.